As soon as Sophie received the invitation, she knew she had to go. It was an invitation to witness a real ghost ritual in a small village that was known to be haunted for centuries. Her curiosity had always gotten the best of her, and this was no exception. Sophie had always been interested in the paranormal. She had read countless books and articles about ghosts, spirits, and other supernatural entities. She had even joined a local ghost hunting group and had been on a few investigations, but nothing had ever come close to what she was about to experience. The invitation came from an old friend, Anna, who had grown up in the village. Anna had told her that the ritual would take place on the night of the full moon, deep in the woods behind the village. The location was kept secret, and only a select few were invited to attend. Sophie was honored to be one of them. She packed her bag with all the necessary equipment: a flashlight, a camera, and an MF meter. She was ready to capture any evidence of paranormal activity that she could. She knew that this was going to be an experience of a lifetime, and she couldn't wait to see what was in store for her. As she drove to the village, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and apprehension. She knew that she was about to step into a world that was beyond her comprehension, a world of ghosts and spirits, but she was ready for it. She was ready to face her fears and confront the unknown. As she reached the village, she saw that it was like no other place she had ever been to. The streets were lined with ancient, crumbling buildings, and the air was thick with an eerie silence. She could feel the weight of history bearing down on her, and she knew that this was a place where the past and the present intertwined in ways that were beyond her understanding. She finally reached the meeting place, and Anna was waiting for her. As they hugged, Anna whispered in her ear, "Are you ready for this?" Sophie nodded, and they set off into the woods, following a winding path that led deeper and deeper into the heart of the forest. As they walked, Sophie could feel the energy building around her. The trees seemed to whisper secrets to each other, and the leaves rustled with a ghostly breeze. She could hear the distant sound of drums and chanting, and she knew that they were getting closer. Finally, they reached a clearing, and Sophie saw the ritual taking place before her. There were candles flickering in the darkness, and a group of people dressed in white robes swaying to the rhythm of the drums. She felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that she was in the presence of something ancient and powerful, something that she could not comprehend. But it was too late to turn back now. She had come this far, and she was determined to see it through. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever was waiting for her in the darkness. Sophie stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the ceremony with a mix of fascination and fear. She had never seen anything like it before, and she knew that this was something that few people would ever get to witness. The group of robed figures continued to chant and sway, their voices rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. Sophie could feel the energy of the ritual building around her, and she knew that something powerful was about to happen. Suddenly, the chanting stopped and the group fell silent. Sophie felt a chill run down her spine as she saw a figure step forward from the shadows. It was an old woman with long white hair and a face that seemed to be carved from stone. The old woman spoke in a voice that was ancient and wise, her words echoing through the clearing like a thunderclap. "Welcome, my children," she said. "You have been invited here to witness a ceremony that has been performed in this village for centuries. A ceremony that honors the spirits of the dead and seeks to gain their favor. Sophie watched as the old woman began to perform the ritual, her movements graceful and precise. She could feel the energy of the ceremony building around her, and she knew that she was in the presence of something truly powerful. As the old woman continued to chant, Sophie could feel the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She had always believed in the paranormal, but she had never experienced anything like this before. It was as if the very air around her was alive with a strange energy, a power that she could not comprehend. Finally, the ceremony came to an end, and the old woman stepped back into the shadows. The group of robed figures began to disperse, and Sophie was left standing alone in the clearing. As she looked around her, she realized that something had changed. The world around her seemed different somehow, as if the veil between the living and the dead had been lifted, and she could see things that she had never seen before. She knew that she had witnessed something truly remarkable, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. And she knew that she had only scratched the surface of what lay hidden in the darkness. As Sophie walked back through the forest, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was following her. She had felt it ever since the end of the ceremony, a presence that she couldn't quite see or hear, but could feel nonetheless. She tried to shake it off, telling herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with every step she took. She looked around, trying to see if there was anything out of the ordinary, but everything seemed normal. The forest was quiet, with only the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze. As she walked, she heard a twig snap behind her. She turned around, but there was nothing there. She quickened her pace, feeling a growing sense of unease. Suddenly, she heard a voice whisper in her ear. "Leave this place," it said. "You do not belong here." Sophie spun around, but there was no one there. She could feel the presence growing stronger, and she knew that she had to get out of the forest as soon as possible. She began to run, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the sound of footsteps behind her, and she knew that she was being pursued. As she emerged from the forest, she saw Anna waiting for her at the edge of the village. She ran towards her, tears streaming down her face. Anna took her in her arms and held her tight. "It's okay," she said. "You're safe now." Sophie looked back towards the forest, feeling a sense of relief as the presence faded away. She knew that she had been lucky to escape, and she knew that she would never forget the feeling of being pursued by something that she couldn't see. Over the next few days, Sophie felt so strange. She felt as if the presence that had pursued her in the forest was still with her, lingering just beyond her line of sight. Strange things began to happen in the village. Doors would open and close on their own, and shadows seemed to move without any apparent cause. People whispered about seeing strange figures in the night, and some claimed to have heard whispers and murmurs coming from the darkness. Sophie tried to ignore it all, telling herself that it was just her imagination running wild. But the more she tried to push it away, the stronger the feelings became. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard a tapping at her window. She opened her eyes and saw a figure standing outside, its features obscured by the darkness. She sat up, feeling a sudden rush of fear. "Who's there?" she called out. There was no answer. The figure just stood there, its silhouette outlined against the moonlit sky. Sophie got out of bed and approached the window, her heart racing. As she drew closer, she saw that the figure was not human, but something else entirely. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, and she could feel its malevolent gaze fixed on her. She stepped back, feeling a surge of terror. She tried to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. Suddenly, the figure vanished, leaving Sophie alone in the darkness. She collapsed back onto her bed, feeling as if the air had been knocked out of her. The strange occurrences in the village continued, and Sophie knew that she was caught in the middle of something that she couldn't explain. She knew that she had to find a way to confront the darkness that was haunting the village, but she didn't know where to start. Sophie couldn't ignore the strange occurrences in the village any longer. She knew that something was wrong, and she had to find out what it was. She turned to Anna, hoping that her friend might have some answers. Anna had grown up in the village and knew its secrets better than anyone. Anna listened as Sophie recounted her experiences. "I think there's something wrong with this place," Sophie said. "I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's getting worse." Anna nodded, her expression grave. "I've heard the stories," she said. "There are dark forces at work in this village. Forces that have been here for a long time." "What kind of forces?" Sophie asked. Anna hesitated, as if trying to find the right words. "It's hard to explain," she said. "There are stories of rituals that have been performed here for centuries. Rituals to appease the spirits of the dead." "The dead," Sophie repeated, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Yes," Anna said. "The village was built on the site of an ancient graveyard. It's said that the spirits of the dead still linger here, and that they demand sacrifice in order to keep the living safe." Sophie felt her stomach turn. "Sacrifice?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anna nodded. "There are stories of people who have disappeared over the years," she said. "People who are rumored to have been sacrificed to the spirits. It's a dark part of our history, one that we don't like to talk about." Sophie felt as if she had been punched in the gut. She couldn't believe that such darkness could exist in the world. "What can we do?" she asked, feeling a growing sense of dread. Anna looked at her, her eyes serious. "We have to find a way to stop the spirits," she said, "before it's too late." Sophie and Anna decided to investigate the rumors of the dark rituals that had been performed in the village. They knew it was a dangerous path, but they felt they had no choice. They searched the village for any clues, talking to the oldest residents and searching through the archives in the local library. They learned that the rituals had been performed by a secret society known as the Brotherhood of the Dead. The society had been founded by the village elders centuries ago in order to appease the spirits of the dead and keep the village safe from harm. Sophie and Anna managed to track down a member of the Brotherhood. He was an old man with a face weathered by time and a voice that quivered with age. He agreed to meet with them in secret under the cover of darkness. They met at an abandoned house on the outskirts of the village. The old man led them to a room filled with strange symbols and artifacts. In the center of the room was a stone altar covered in dried blood. "This is where we perform the ritual," the old man said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sophie felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew that they were treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't back down now. "Can you tell us more about the ritual?" Anna asked. The old man nodded. "It's a sacred rite, passed down through the generations," he said. "We offer sacrifices to the spirits of the dead in exchange for their protection. It's the only way to keep the village safe. Sophie felt a sense of revulsion at the idea of sacrificing innocent people to appease the spirits. "That's barbaric," she said, her voice trembling with anger. The old man looked at her, his eyes cold. "You do not understand," he said. "The spirits must be appeased. If we do not offer sacrifices, they will turn on us." Sophie knew that they had to stop the Brotherhood before more innocent lives were lost. But she also knew that they were up against a powerful and dangerous organization. She didn't know if they were ready for what lay ahead. Sophie and Anna knew they had to act fast. They couldn't allow the Brotherhood of the Dead to continue their dark rituals and sacrifice innocent lives. They spent the next few days planning their next move. They knew they needed to gather evidence and expose the Brotherhood's crimes to the rest of the village, but they also knew that the Brotherhood would do everything in their power to stop them. One night, they snuck into the Brotherhood's meeting place. They hid in the shadows, watching as the members gathered around the altar. They heard the old man's voice as he led the ceremony and watched in horror as a young girl was brought forward as the sacrifice. Sophie and Anna couldn't stand by and watch as another life was taken. They burst out of the shadows and confronted the Brotherhood. The members were taken aback by their sudden appearance, but quickly recovered and moved to attack the two young women. Sophie and Anna fought back with all their strength. They had prepared for this moment, and they were ready to do whatever it took to stop the Brotherhood. They dodged and weaved through the attackers, striking back with fists and feet. In the end, it was a close fight. Sophie and Anna were outnumbered, and the Brotherhood was well trained in combat. But they refused to give up. They fought with all their might, determined to protect the village and put an end to the dark rituals once and for all. In the end, they emerged victorious. They had managed to gather evidence of the Brotherhood's crimes, and they presented it to the rest of the village. The Brotherhood was disbanded, and the village finally began to heal from the wounds of the past. Sophie and Anna knew that they had done the right thing. They had saved lives and brought justice to the village, but they also knew that they had put themselves in danger. They left the village soon after, knowing that they could never return. Sophie and Anna left the village, but they couldn't shake off the memories of what they had experienced. They had seen things that they couldn't explain, things that went against everything they believed in. As they traveled, they couldn't help but wonder if the Brotherhood of the Dead had truly been destroyed. They knew that the society had been deeply ingrained in the village's culture, and that there might be others who still believed in the power of the dark rituals. Their fears were soon confirmed. They received a message from one of the village's former residents, warning them that the Brotherhood had reformed and that they were seeking revenge against Sophie and Anna. Sophie and Anna knew that they had to act fast. They couldn't allow the Brotherhood to threaten their lives or the lives of anyone else. They returned to the village, knowing that they were putting themselves in danger. They confronted the leaders of the Brotherhood, determined to put an end to their reign of terror once and for all. The fight was fierce, but in the end, Sophie and Anna emerged victorious. The Brotherhood was destroyed, and the village was finally free from their grasp. Sophie and Anna left the village for good, knowing that they had done what was right. They had faced their fears, and they had stood up against the darkness that threatened to consume the village. They knew that they would never forget the horrors that they had seen, but they also knew that they had found the strength to overcome the